All right, guys. Well, we're here with one Mr. Matt Black. He's a gentleman, a scholar, friend of mine, and quite frankly, he's the reason why I have a really cool intro to the show. So, thank you for being a part of your week with John W. Literally could not have most of it without you.
Well,
So,
thank you for inviting me on the show, John.
yeah. So, how have things been? I know that you're currently working as a digital artist. You've done let's go back to what you've done for the last several years. I mean, you've done work with Gretchen, you've done work with supercars. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So I've generally been freelancing as a 3D artist for about 20 years now. I kind of stumbled into it by accident. I had a bit of an engineering background in my youth, and the more technical side of art really appealed to me. So I started looking into 3D, and essentially that took me down the path. And I ended up, I think my first ever gig was illustrating a children's book for an Australian music book author.
Nice.
So I had to develop these range of characters, and it was fairly challenging at the time because I had to model the hand positions for the flutes. It kind of went from there, really. I went
Hmm.
from a lot of freelancing, and I ended up working for Gulf Oil for 2 years, which was a lot more technical kind of rendering of gas stations and so on and so forth. And it's just been a very wild and varied path to where I am right now. I've pretty much done it all at one stage or another.
Right. And I remember you sending over some pics a couple of years ago of just these immaculate guitars you were doing some work for. I can't remember the famous guitarist, but
Oh, that's the company I was working for at the time was Randy Parsons,
that's right.
and that's right. And he was building guitars for Jack White.
Yeah.
Uh, so we had this idea that we were going to start prototyping up guitars together.
Hmm.
And because I had the ability to build and render things photographically, it was a lot easier for him to visualize a finished guitar before he'd actually sat down and physically made it. So that was a lot of fun, and trying to come up with unique shapes that it hadn't been done before. And I worked on that project for maybe about 2.5 to 3 years, I think. I don't think he actually made any of them, but we've got the most enormous catalog of prototype guitars on the planet.
But now he can make them, and you've got your unique and quite frankly awesome signature to them. So that's gnarly as
Thank
hell.
you. Yeah, it was fun. He actually will contact me occasionally when he's stuck on a certain idea, like if he's trying to come up with a different style of F holes for a semi-acoustic guitar or whatever. He normally drops me an email and says, Matt, can you give me a hand with this? It's all good fun.
Yeah. And you've been so for those people who don't have an ear for accents, you're a Brit,
Correct.
and you spent a large amount of time over in France,
I did.
and
Yes.
and you
Yeah,
landed.
I
Oh, go ahead.
no no. Yeah, I left England when I was about 30. And I was in France for about 14 years before I met my now American wife, and
Mm.
now I'm living here in Tennessee.
Right. It's crazy to think you've been all over and you landed and we met in a very, very small town, Elizabethton, Tennessee, which if you guys are familiar with the American South, and then you shrink it down to a small American town, and then you shrink it down a little further, and then cut that in half, you've kind of got the beginnings of what would be a large day for Elizabethton. and
That's that's the nail on the head.
And so it's very interesting to for both of us to meet up there. I'm from an area adjacent, so i I'm from a small town, and I never went over there because that was a smaller town. So it's very very interesting and unique. But you're able to do so. Not only do you do a lot of graphical art, but you're also an amazing guitarist, and you had your
Thank you.
bandmates there, and you're being able to have a lot of fun with your band at the time.
Yeah, actually, I miss them a lot because now obviously I'm in Clarksville. It's about a 5.5 hour drive back to Johnson City. But that was a stroke of luck, actually. I was actually working on a video for I think it was Ed Snodderly. Do you remember him?
Name rings a small bell. Was he the
Yeah,
guy that had the not the pawn shop, but the
no,
unique?
the down home club.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that's right. He's actually got a quote up on the Nashville Museum of Country Music, uh, and he's a BAFTA winner. Anyway, so we got asked to do this video because my wife's a photographer, as you know,
Hmm.
which is how we met in the first
Yeah.
place, I do. And I just happened to ask, would you happen to know any bands that need a guitarist? And he was like, actually, yeah, I do. So 2 or 3 days later, I got a phone call from Travis, who was the drummer for the band, and then the next thing I know, every Thursday night for the next 2.5 years, we would play together, and I missed that a lot actually.
Yeah, like you know, going into the art and the music, and again to kind of puff up your resume, and also just to be able to explain some of the cool shit you've done. The was it the 20th or the 25th anniversary of the Rhythm and Roots Festival that you did the winning poster for?
Yeah, that's right. It was the 20th anniversary of
Yeah.
Bristol Rhythm and Roots. That was a lot of fun. That was through the Hired agency
Hmm.
actually in Johnson City. I can't even remember how we got introduced or I ended up working for them. I've got no memory of that whatsoever, but I just remember I had an email from them saying this project had kind of landed on their table. And because they'd seen some of my guitar work that you mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
would I be interested in designing a guitar-esque poster for the 20th anniversary of Bristol Rhythm and Roots? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a go. And at the time, it was like a running competition.
Right.
I think there were 4 or 5 different design agencies involved, and so I did my bit and sent it in, and ended up winning, which was nice. So I had to go to the big unveiling, and I had a TV interview and all that kind of famous person stuff, and had to sign 100 posters. It was fun actually, really
Yeah,
enjoyable.
it was it was gnarly. I'm like, I know that guy.
I literally got the T-shirt in my drawer.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was fun. I really enjoyed that project. There was a lot of backwards and forwards with the museum itself. They wanted it just right. They really liked the original concept, but we came to an agreement in the end. But yeah, it was fun to
Well, cool. And now, you said you lived in Clarksville, which is right outside of Nashville. How do you like the music scene?
do. It's very country,
Hmm.
um, which well, I mean, I have a lot of different music interests, but I guess if there was some kind of hierarchy, country would probably be a bit further down on the list than what I am used to playing and being involved with. Um, so a lot of live country music going on in Nashville.
Right.
Um, but it is still like 45 minutes, an hour away from where I live. So we don't tend to venture in very often.
That makes sense. And you would think that still in Tennessee, in an even smaller area, the musical interests from Northeast Tennessee versus Middle Tennessee is more of the blues. Rhythm and roots is a expression of like the blues, the rock and roll, the rockabilly, things that like Nashville is more of that like solid country, pop country kind of thing. But you know, the area where I'm from and that you're able to be at for some time is a little more outlaw country, a little, I guess, I want to say a little broader scope of music.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. It's a lot more focused here on the country, pop country side of things than it was back in East Tennessee, which was a more, as you said, it's more of like rhythm and blues, bluegrass, even a bit of jazz crept in there occasionally. It's a more of a wider spectrum of that genre of music, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
that's what I liked about East Tennessee. I actually miss it quite a lot.
It's a weird place. It's one of those when you try to describe it to somebody, they're like, "Why in the hell would you ever go there?"
I know, right? On
And
paper,
yeah, and even growing up there, I was like, "There's nothing to do here. There's nothing you want to see." And then as I get older, you realize that there's a lot of things that you value, especially just not having to deal with fucking people.
yeah, that's right. It's true. There's a lot more space and a lot less people. a lot less traffic
Hmm.
back in East Tennessee. Here it's absolutely horrendous. And I also miss the landscape. We don't really have anything you like. We don't
It's
have a
very
lot of.
flat in Nashville, funny
It's
enough,
very
that
flat.
area.
It is. Yeah, this whole area. I mean, I can literally see Kentucky from my back garden.
Hmm.
So it kind of, if you think like this part of Tennessee is flat, you go into Kentucky, it's even flatter, if
Yeah.
that's even possible. But yeah, it's like a pancake around here. There's nothing, there's no real backdrop to it, which is what I used to really like about Johnson City. Having the mountains in the background and everything else. And I
Yeah.
miss the rivers and the forests, and it's just a nice place to live. And I can see how people get sucked back there.
Yep. Because I think your wife is from that area, correct?
Yeah, she was born in Chattanooga,
Okay.
and all her folks still pretty much live in Johnson City, which is
Gotcha.
why we go back when we do.
Makes sense.
Uh-huh. And incidentally, so are all my friends.
Yeah. Able
But
to
hey,
sit around, pick a little, drink a little, and enjoy the fresh mountain air.
yeah, that's exactly right. Which is something we don't really get in these parts.
Yeah.
Very,
This
very dense traffic around here, John. I don't know if you've ever been to Clarksville, but it's a night.
it the last time I was through that area, it reminded me a lot of Northern Virginia, right around outside of the DC area, and
Yeah, yeah,
you, it makes you think why there's such a push for electric vehicles because you see all these cars, you're like, how the hell is there any gasoline left?
yeah. I know. It's crazy. Like Whitney's, she goes to work and it's only like I think it's 6.5 miles from our house, but it can take an hour to get there some
Yeah,
mornings. It's really insane.
it's like you get a
Uh,
bicycle. I see the cat having a good time.
yeah. Hang on a minute. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Disrupted.
Animal
Back.
special guests are actually my buddy Chris. One of his dogs enjoys coming up around his feet. He does a podcast, Sheeler Select, and he'll have his dogs come in and bark and rustle around from time to time. So,
There you go. They're not camera shy.
nah, the and the pets we have are outdoor pets, so no breaking in from time to time.
You got dogs?
So we have a fox, currently one cat and two kittens.
Wait, did you say a fox?
Fox, yes.
An actual fox?
Yep, a it's a red fox, white coloring.
Well, good lord.
Yeah, it's there for a small time in Virginia. You were allowed to have a fox as a pet. My wife's family had foxes, and they're like, we are having a litter of kits. Would you like to have one? And she was like, I think it would be great. They're super fun. And you get a lot of perks. Like they're very, very intelligent, very active, very mobile. They move around like cats, like very three-dimensional. Like dogs are very two-dimensional. They just run around, um, but they don't jump up onto things or not climbing onto walls. Like foxes, they can dig a trench or a hole in, I mean, minutes almost. They're just like melting through anything that's not rock, and then they are exceptional climbers. Like can scale a fence. They'll hook up and just run up a fence, and great jumpers, which means that they're a real pain in the ass when you're trying to be like, okay, I want you to stay in this area, and this is where the food and shelter and safety is, and they're like, nah, nah, hell with that. But fun pet,
Well,
she's 11, so about
right.
77-ish in because they age about like dog years, so she's
So
an
do
older
you
lady. Hmm.
you have it in is it in a pen or a cage or something?
A very large enclosure. We actually have three sections. So she has like her play area that's in the middle, her nest box outer. I want to say it's not like a trampoline, but it's a large sun bed that she lays on, and then like that's in her area, and then she has like tunnels, and she has a couple houses, and she uses a litter box like a cat, so she has her litter box in there too, and Then the front is kind of like the foyer, and that's two gates because we can't, unless we take her hiking, which she likes to go hiking, or we let her out. She'll she'll just be running around in there. She'll try to be like, oh, I'll escape for a minute. Tiny freedom.
Ah,
It, it's a wild it's a wild thing, but Virginia has, I think, as of 4 or 5 years ago, outlawed um, or made it illegal to own a fox as a pet, or at least a native species. So she's grandfathered in, and we're just taking care of her and making sure that she's enjoying her uh, elder days. Oh, Matt, I think we lost you. I'm going to cut, guys. We'll be right back.
second.
And we're back.
And we're back. Sorry, I was going to ask you actually. I'm assuming it's like a British fox, like red, white chest, long nose.
Um, yes, except for the coloring. So she's American red fox, but she's almost completely white with a little bit of coloring and spots.
Huh,
But like not an albino white, but just like a white. And it's funny because you think of a red fox having the red with some black patterning, and
yeah,
that's standard. But a lot of foxes will have atypical coloring, and I found out this because of her family raising foxes, and that was some of them will have anywhere from like a whiter uh, disposition to almost a completely black. There was one fox that I saw. It had golden eyes and it was black except for gray areas. It looked honestly like a tiny werewolf. It was super cool.
nice. I've always wanted a fox. I must admit.
So I don't recommend it
Okay.
in
Yeah,
the
no,
winter.
I didn't realize they were escape artists.
That's the easy part. The hard part is that they like to scent everything that
Ah,
they think that they might want to ever own,
okay.
and it is not very different from a skunk's smell. It is very
Oof.
pungent, and a couple drops, and you're trying to both locate something that you can't see while being like, "This is horrendous."
Oh man. Okay, maybe not.
So, I think it was for more practical purposes than vanity that they said, "Nah, no, no more keeping foxes."
So in effect, you are now in possession of an illegal animal,
I like to say a formally legal animal.
a formerly legal animal. Nice.
But that's the pet situation here, and so far so good. The cat's an excellent hunter. I don't know about yours.
No, they stay inside all times.
You don't occasionally get the mouse, or hopefully you're not having any rodent issues whatsoever.
No, no, they never go outside ever,
Ah,
and we equally don't have mice in the house either, which is nice. It's not
nice.
France.
Well, so speaking of, for the nerds of us who like Settlers of Catan, didn't you live? What was the place you lived that was the inspiration for a board game?
Oh, Carcassonne.
Yeah, that was it.
Right. Well remembered.
I remember nerdy shit pretty well. But yeah, you're well, that was a castle and what, like 400 people or something?
Um, I think originally it was a lot more than that. I think probably these days it's probably 400 people who live and work there. It's more of a tourist attraction, really. But
Hmm.
interestingly enough, I actually work for the design agency who designed the board, funnily enough. Obviously,
Nice.
later down the line, but
Yeah.
they were the people who actually came up with it in the first place. But yeah, beautiful part of the world. And I miss it a lot.
So you've traveled, you've lived in various places, and there's always that question of like, Europe, America. Which one, if you're like, I'm gonna be here for the next 20 years, blank check, house paid for, um, don't have to worry about food and all the the accoutrements for all the all the fine whiskeys. Where would you think would be like the ideal spot out of the ones you visited and or lived at?
So I can live in these places for 20 years with all my food and alcohol provided.
Yeah. Just a place that you enjoy, like, that you think the quality of life is just
Okay, I'm going to have to say Provence
okay. Why's that?
is probably the most beautiful part of the world I've been to so far. The culture is very rich and it's also very laid back. And the pace of life is very slow. It's just a very relaxed way to spend your years. And if I was going to spend the next 20 years, that would take me to 70. So that would do nicely.
Oh shit. You've aged
Mm.
well, man.
Thank you. Pure living.
It,
Cheers. I'm going to have to try that whiskey. I've never heard of that before.
yeah, Green Spot. It's a
I'm going to make a mental note.
and if there's ever a representative for Green Spot wants to sponsor the show, by all means, like and subscribe and reach out to me.
Here, here. I'm currently drinking Jack Daniels.
You know, I like Jack Daniels. It's a rite of passage in Tennessee. You have to, drink it and determine whether or not you think it's good or bad. And
I agree.
almost everyone I know will drink it, will love it, and then there's a hate period. There's like, I won't touch that shit. But then
Oh,
as you get a little older and you realize that the white label is what they serve in bars and the black label is actually more representative of the brand, it's nice. And
I agree.
it's the only whiskey I think that in the Tennessee that's made in a dry county.
That's correct, I think.
Yeah,
We actually went down to Lynchburg and had a wander around the distillery a couple of weeks back.
yeah, and you can't buy it at the distillery because they cannot sell alcohol there.
No, although you can buy the specialist limited edition runs. I don't know.
Okay.
There must be like a slight loophole because you could get these like fairly interesting blends, but you could not buy a bottle of number 7 for love nor money. In
Right.
fact, I even asked, and the lady said, "You need to go to Walmart 20 miles up the road."
Yep.
Right, we will do that.
It's like we're on our way back. We got you.
There you go. Strange.
Yeah, there's some very back ass laws in this country, but all countries have some very stupid laws for
Definitely.
whatever reasons.
I have to say it was an absolutely fascinating talk. I took my mother. She came down to see us,
Excellent.
and we were like, let's go to Lynchburg and do a tour of the Jack Daniels distillery.
That's the sort of thing where you talk to your mother and you're like, you know what, I can do this for you.
There you go. There you go. It was one of the first things that came up actually when we told her that we were living near Nashville. She was like,
Nice.
we must go to the Jack Daniels distillery. I was like, yeah, all right. We shall do that when you arrive.
Well, I think that's the takeaway. It doesn't matter where you live. There's obviously great places, and there's I wouldn't want to live in the Ukraine right now for damn sure. I don't think that
No.
would there's obviously pros and cons, and some places like much better than others, especially depending on the time. But I think you can learn, and if you're looking for appreciate just about anywhere you live for if you're looking for the right things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is to do with your mental attitude as well, isn't
Hmm.
it? You can decide that you are going to love where you live. And it's just a simple switch,
Yeah.
apparently.
We all figure it out, right?
Yeah, eventually the pieces start clicking into place. I mean, like as I said to you before we started recording, how much I missed East Tennessee, but you just kind of adapt, don't you? I adapt to the fact that I have to drive 6 hours to see my friends.
Right. And the slower pace of life. It's definitely different. You get into a bigger city or even outside of a big city, and we were talking about the accursed traffic. It just
Mm.
seems like whenever you're going somewhere, it's 45 minutes for a 6 mile drive. You're getting groceries, and you come back, all of a sudden 2 hours are shot. You're barely able to cook dinner. You're in bed, you're up, and it's boom, 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 boom. But, Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, you're going and you go to a place and you piddle around a little bit, and it may be the same 2 hours, but it doesn't feel heavy or rushed. It seems like
No.
it's, and I've heard there's places that are even half the speed of that, and I'm like, oh shit.
Oof, that's like laid back, isn't it? But
Yep.
no, it's true. I mean, I have to drive about 40 minutes to work each direction because I work over the border in Kentucky. Um, and there was a time up until I got crashed into on the interstate by car
Mm.
that I was using the interstate every day. But now I decide that I'm not going to use the interstate ever again. And now I take the back roads to work.
Okay.
It may take longer, but it's a lot less stressful.
There's that. The we are about 20, 30 years away from figuring out how to get roads to do well in this country, and that's me being optimistic.
Could be worse though. It could be like it is in Europe.
Fuck that. No, no, they. I can see why it's such an ordeal to get your license in Europe because they don't want people to be on the roads.
No, they don't. And I have to say, one of the major downsides of living in France was the tolls. I don't know if a lot of people know about that, but
No.
if you get on the interstate in France, you have to pay. And if you imagine if you had to drive from Nashville to LA, for example, not only would you have the extortionate fuel cost, because obviously in Europe it's almost like 3 times as much as it is here in the USA,
Mm.
you also have to pay for the privilege of driving on the interstates. And that would cost probably about €1,000 to do a distance like that. It's horrendous amounts of money.
Wear and tear, vehicle aside, just €1,000 just to take a trip.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's one of the major downsides of living over there. It's expensive to own a vehicle.
Hmm.
Right? Swings and roundabouts, bro.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to wrap up with focusing a little bit on the business and asking you. So you've been in graphical design, art, and again, you've done traditional art. You've really turned it and focused, like you said, on more of the graphic art. And you've touched, I think you've told me like 15, 20 different types of software. You've done damn near all of it. You've done moving, live action. You've done cartoons. I've seen some of the stuff you've pulled up. You're even working with AI now to
That's
be
right.
able to do like mock-ups by feeding the machine and changing parameters. All of this stuff. What would you recommend to somebody that's trying to get into graphic arts? Like, what would you say? Like, is there any degrees or specifications or certifications or software? Like, what would you say if you were talking to a green newbie?
Okay. If I was talking to a green newbie, the first piece of advice I would say would be to learn the Adobe software because it's now considered industry standard. It probably has been for many, many years. But if you've got your basis in photo manipulation and vector art, um, that is an extremely good grounding to pretty much to be able to design most things. 3D aside, um, if you can operate Illustrator and Photoshop to a high level, you're a big step in the right direction. It's a very competitive world out there. It's extremely saturated as well. But that aside, if you can show skills in those two pieces of software, that's a really good step in the right direction. Would
Awesome.
be my advice.
At least to get your foot heading in the right way.
Yeah, that's right. Adobe is the only way to go. People complain about it having, they've got a monopoly on vector artwork and photo manipulation and what have you. But at the end of the day, that's all we. If you apply for any job, you can almost guarantee that the list of criteria at the top of it will be the Adobe suite.
Makes sense. Well,
They are the number one photo and editing and vector folks. You got to know how to use it.
yep. Well, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll talk more, and you're also working on some stuff for me that's not a part of this direct show, but will be part of the suite of stuff that's coming out by me for other people, including business. So you'll be seeing more of his work on my show, and well, if you're willing to be on it, you'll be seeing more of Matt on the show.
Sure, that would be a pleasure, John. Anytime.
Well, thank you very much again. Appreciate it. And guys, if you like Matt and guys like him or want to learn cool shit, like and subscribe. That's my shameless plug. I'm John W. That's Matt Bridges. You guys have a great night.
Cheers.